Hello friends, I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you doing today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope all is well. I hope all is good with you. Today I wanted to talk to you about Wrath of Dragons by Scott King. This is a book that I just finished yesterday. And full disclosure, Scott's a friend of mine. This book was not given to me, but it was... We have a mutual... work relationship, so this was part of a deal that I worked with him. I was very excited about this book. It came out, I want to say, like May of this year, or spring, March, April, May, somewhere around there of this year, and I was really excited to hear about it because I love Scott's stuff. Scott wrote the Zima Chronicles, which was like one of the first things that I read of his long ago. Cupcakes versus Brownies was the first book. I don't know that I ever read the rest, but it was really interesting and really fun. And I knew that I was excited to read more of his fiction. So this was very high on my list. I had wanted it in hardback form. I'm a hardback guy. I have lots of hardbacks. I don't necessarily do audiobooks very well. I can't pay attention when I'm listening to an audiobook like I can when I'm reading. And digital screens hurt my eyes, so hardback is my preferred reading method. So Scott was kind enough to include this as part of our business deal and personalize it and send it to me. That being said, my friendship with Scott, or my working relationship with Scott, has absolutely nothing to do with this review, because I think I would love this book regardless of whether it was his or not. Scott is an independent publisher, author. He publishes his own works under his Majestic Arts brand, all digital, direct digital download, or in this case, print on demand. And I find it hard to believe that this book is self-published. I know that's like a glowing review right up front, but that's the truth. Like, I think this book could have very easily been picked up by a major publisher, and maybe it will one day. Maybe once Scott has more of the series fleshed out, it will be. He has alluded to me that there are many, many more books to come. I'm not going to say how many, but this part is at least a trilogy. These characters. This book is book 1 in the Elder Realm series. That's the series that will continue telling stories about this world that Scott has created. There is a short story collection called The Cultist and the Worm and Other Tales, which is like Elder Realm, Stories from Elder Realm Part 1. There's another one coming out this spring, I believe, before book 2 comes out. And so I feel like he's going to continue kind of developing both sets. The Tales from Elder Realm, very fun stories, but this is meat. And so this story starts off with Carter. He's a mage's apprentice, a wizard. He wants to be a grand hero. He wants to be a great wizard, and he finds his opportunity when dragons start attacking, and he goes off to save the world in his mind. That's what happens. And as he's out there, he comes across a dragon that is not what he expected. This dragon is kind of artistic and fat and lazy and just like, get out of my house kind of thing. And the two of them end up entangled and have to go on this adventure together. So the book focuses very much on Carter and Doug. Doug is the dragon's name. And then a third character comes in a little bit later named Alex, and she is the heiress to the major kingdom in Scott's world. So it follows these three on their grand adventure to save the world from this dragon attack. Through that, there is dozens of minor adventures that happen, standard kind of fantasy style that characters find themselves somewhere they think they're going to the right place and end up completely hijinxed by some shenanigans. The cool part about this is not, I wouldn't say it's satire. There's definitely not, it's not a It's not a Pratchett-style book, but there were moments in this book that made me think, like, oh, this is headed a little bit more satire than I expected, but then it came right back. But it's also not, like, dark fantasy where it's, drowning in sorrow and dismay. It's something kind of in between. It's epic fantasy. There are deaths. There are huge fights. There are major characters that die. There's some really tough decisions. There's moments that might make you cry. But it's also very alive. There's a lot of levity. And I think that's what makes Scott's writing so engaging, is it's very human. It's not trying to force emotion out of you by just pouring on layers of it. It kind of puts some on and then takes some off and then puts some on and then takes some off, and so it's constantly riding this wave of highs and lows, and it makes it really, really fun. I'm extremely intrigued by the world. It's obvious that Scott is a food lover. When you read this book, he talks about a lot of foods and how amazing they are. It's obvious that he has thought very long and hard about his world. There's multiple layers to this world, physically and magically. There's multiple layers to magic. His magic system isn't a standard fantasy magic, wizards can cast all this stuff. He kind of has tiers, and different types of magic can do different types of things. And so it's a very well composed world, and it feels alive and it feels real. My one criticism that I've had, and I've talked to Scott about it personally, is it is a new fantasy world, so there are creatures that exist in this world that we are not familiar with as readers, and they're not yet fully understood in this book. This book kind of glosses over like a whole lot of creatures, a whole lot of terms, measurement units, and that sort of thing that we as the reader don't know, and the book never explains. And it's kind of by design. I get it. There's no real need to explain it to the reader yet. But Scott has told me that it will make sense as the story progresses. So that would be my one minor critique. Overall, I couldn't stop reading it. I got this book last week. I read it in just 3 or 4 days. I mean, it was, and I wasn't pouring my heart into reading it. It was just, picking it up and reading it until I fell asleep every day kind of thing. And I really enjoyed it. And I'll probably read it again. I think there's a few things that I will pick up on now as I go back and follow through. There is a sort of a Fates type thing going on here where there are players outside of this book's perspective that are manipulating the world, and we're not quite sure what they are doing. So I want to kind of go back and read through those parts again, at least. But overall, this book's amazing. It really is. And I have the hardcover here. Physically, if you've never bought a print-on-demand book, they might be a little weird to touch and feel. I talked to Scott about this is the matte version of the dust sleeve, and it feels kind of rubbery, and it takes, it kind of gets this layer of finger grease on it if you touch it a lot. So it is kind of an odd feel, but overall the rest of the book is amazing. It's really bound very well. I believe it's glue bound. It's not stitch bound. The pages are thick enough. It's an extremely well done product. And this is the first hardback print-on-demand book I've purchased, or been given. So this kind of was an experiment for me also, because I love to learn how things are manufactured. But overall, I think this is going to be a really fun series. I'm really excited for Scott's writing style. I'm really excited for his jokes and his humor, but also his ability to pull at heartstrings and to make you really think about what he's putting on the page. And that seemed to be my favorite part. So I will leave it at that for you to discover. Wrath of Dragons, Scott King. It's available on Amazon. I will put a link in the description below. Not an affiliate link or anything like that. Just sharing the love. I hope that you will check it out. I hope to check out some more of his stuff, specifically the Zima Chronicles, I think it's called. I'll link that also. Basically a Candyland, but with a darker tone. So check out some more of his works. I really am really impressed, very impressed, and I'm intrigued to have Scott helping me try to tell a story that I want to tell. So Thank you for the book, Scott. Thank you, everybody, for stopping by and hanging out with me today. I appreciate it. I think I said yesterday that I was going to talk about Westworld. That might be tomorrow, or I also just finished Sopranos yesterday, so it'll be one of those two things. We'll see. But thank you for being here, as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends. I really do appreciate you, and I will see you tomorrow.
Hey, Doc, wait! I want to ask you something.
Today's random fact comes from Wikipedia. When was blue added to M&Ms? In early 1995, Mars ran a promotion in which consumers were invited to vote on which of blue, pink, or purple would replace the tan M&Ms. Blue was the winner, replacing tan in the fall of 1995. I don't even remember tan M&Ms.